You're listening to the Book Your Dream Clients podcast, episode 51.
You're listening to the Book Your Dream Clients podcast, where we believe business can be simple and you can use your intuition to run towards your goal. Self-made business and success coach Lindsay Maloney helps you start and scale your dream coaching business. With her step-by-step intuitive and creative guidance, you'll leave ready to put her tips into action, push your business forward, and work with your dream clients. Lindsay is here to help you get unstuck and structure your brilliance into a coaching business that's sustainable and financially exhilarating. Here's your host, Lindsay Maloney.
Today's episode is with Veronica Grant, who is a love and life coach, and we talk about all things dating, relationships, coaching, and business. All kinds of stuff in a small amount of time. But I think you're really going to like it, especially if you are just building your business and you're trying to figure out what kind of coach you should be, and you're trying to find the confidence to kind of own your own journey. I think you're really going to enjoy this. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the episode. Veronica, thank you so much for being on the Book Your Dream Clients podcast. I'm super excited to visit with you.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. I love to interview all kinds of people for the podcast to get all kinds of tips, but I also love interviewing other coaches. And I am really interested in what you do. I have not had a love coach on our podcast before. So this is something that's going to be very interesting for our audience as well. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone?
Yeah, my name is Veronica, and I live in the Bay Area with my husband and our cute little doggy. And I have been coaching for, this would be my 5th year. And then in terms of doing love coaching, that's been 4 years. And I'm sure that's a story we'll get into as to how I made that switch a little bit later. But I help women who feel like they have it all except love find it. And I approach my coaching from a very, from like a spiritual, maybe one could say woo place, but I try to be really grounded and practical, because my ideal client is not necessarily someone who's like, oh, I'm super woo, but they're just looking for something different because all of the stale old dating advice that's out there around like be more feminine or just be flirty or be yourself is like, not really working. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah. And I've been married for a long time. So this area is something that I don't even think we really had the capabilities of having a love coach online when I was dating, when I met my husband. So this is like such fresh content for me. And if my husband's listening, I'm not like looking for tips on how to find I'm good. But I love that you are doing this. So tell us about how you got started, because you said this isn't something that I originally began with. You had like a year where you were just kind of putting everything together, correct?
Yeah. So I call my first year of business like my starter year, my practice year. And it was just it was a whirlwind. That's one way you could put it. So I started as a health coach. I think a lot of coaches start as a health coach. There's lots of health coach training programs out there. And so I had a story of just really struggling with body image and eating, but not to like diet and lose weight all the time. And I finally, got to a point where I was feeling better in my body, and I was really eating to feel nourished rather than eat to lose weight. And I really I had been teaching fitness classes and yoga classes and all that kind of stuff for a really long time. And I really hated this job that I had. Like I hated it so much. And I was talking to one of my friends one time, and she was like, oh, well, why do you do what you love on nights and weekends? And I was like, oh yeah, I could just teach yoga classes and fitness classes full. And she was like, yeah, but Veronica, I think you might get a little bored just teaching fitness classes all the time. You should check out my friend's business. She went to a health coaching school, and now she's a health coach. So she still teaches, but she also does this other thing. And I was like, that's interesting. I never heard of this before. And so I, immediately like stalked this girl for probably about a good year. I don't even know if I ever reached out to her. I just stalked her in her business. And then I enrolled in a health coaching school. I went to IIN. I did the program. I started coaching for a year, and it was horrible. I hardly got any clients. I really had no clue what I was doing. I mean, I had one client, and yet I was working 12, 14-hour days, and I have no clue what I was doing. I think I was just tinkering around on my website. And so in a moment of desperation, I did a free coaching call with someone, with a life and business coach. And we just had a conversation. And when I talked to her, I realized, oh my gosh, I don't have like a focus or like a brand, or there's no clear message. Like I really just need to work with this person. And so I worked with her, and probably about 4 or 5 months into our working together, I just kind of casually said one time, I was like, yeah, a lot of people in my community, they just tell me they want to lose weight so they can date. Or they tell me they want to lose weight because they don't feel good putting themselves out there when they feel like this. And then I also kind of mentioned, oh yeah, I just went to lunch with my friend because she really wanted my 2 cents on her love life. And she was like, Veronica, follow the breadcrumbs. Hello. And I was like, what, dating coaching, relationship coaching? She was like, yeah. And I was like, that's not a thing. People don't pay for that. Turns out I was wrong. People do pay for that, and it is a thing. And that's how I switched. So I switched about a year into my business. And, I like to be really upfront about that first year. I did a webinar once where 0 people came to it. I did.
We've all been there.
Yes. I did a beta coaching program where it was like $50 for 6 weeks. I was just trying to get something off the ground to like make myself feel better and to start coaching. 0 people signed up for it, and it cost freaking $50. And I think I made $17,000 that first year in business. So wasn't so great. And then once I switched over to dating coaching and relationship coaching, I just got so excited. I wasn't finding myself, Wednesday night being like, oh crap, I need to write a blog post. I just had content and ideas just like oozing out of my brain. And I never look back. It's been amazing. I mean, I think my list was like 200 people when I switched over. And I think within that first 6 months, my list had, I think, tripled in size, which is pretty fast. Especially when you're first starting out and don't have biggest community or reach in the world. And I think that just goes to show like, people were interested in hearing what I had to say because I was actually interested in talking about it.
So it sounds like to me that the health coaching business was your gateway drug, because I feel like that's like all the entrepreneurs' gateway drug is health coaching. We all have that. It's so weird. We should take a poll so we have some actual stats, because everyone says it. So you started out with that and you were like, this is great. I know I want to help people, but this isn't like the right spot. Like something was off. And then it's always the obvious thing to everyone else except you. And it always takes us the longest to figure it out for some reason.
Yeah.
And because I think that's easy to me. It has to be hard. Like we always think everything has to be hard and take forever, and it doesn't. So once that finally clicked for you, everything started falling into place.
Yeah. And the other thing too is that I learned is, my business coach, her name's Hillary Rubin. I don't know if you know her. She's not coaching anymore, but she's also very much like a spiritual life coach. And so we were just working on my own inner stuff. And probably the first 3 or 4 months of us working together was hardly about business. I kept saying, when are we going to talk about business? When are we going to talk about business? And she was like, this is business. You are your business. You should deal with your stuff first. I was like, okay. So I just went along with it. And what I really discovered through that process is, my story was not just a story about, some girl who had poor body image, but it was really a story that was wrapped up in me getting my validation through men. So my struggle with, I had really hard time dating, and, I had no problem meeting guys. I had problems like, having them like want me over the long period. And that was very much tied to my lack of confidence, which was very much tied to my body image. So I was really just dating from this place of like behind a facade, because I really thought that I wasn't skinny enough to have a kind of guy I want. So I'd had to like kind of play that up or whatever. And so it was also very much tied to my own story. And so I could just talk about my own experiences dating and my different relationships, which I personally, I know people have different, comfort levels of what they share, but I personally had no problem sharing old stories of dates gone wrong or relationships and lessons learned, just because it was really interesting for me to go back and look at it from a new perspective. And people love to hear that because they're like, oh my God, I'm not crazy. Or, oh my God, like this person, this girl can relate to me.
Mm-hmm. So you probably go through the same thing with your clients. They're probably like, when are you going to give me the dating tips, Veronica? And you're like, this is this is the dating tip.
Exactly. Like I've had plenty of clients where we've gotten to the last session. They're like, Veronica, we've hardly talked about dating. And I'm like, it's like, that's the whole big cosmic joke. Like it's all about dating, but then none of it's about dating.
Yep, exactly. It's always mindset stuff, and that's not what people are seeking right away. And then they kind of, so it kind of is. I've been telling myself all these stories, whether it has to do with dating or starting your business or whatever. It's always the inside work.
Totally. And I tell them too, I'm like, dating's just the gateway drug. I literally say that phrase, just like you said with health coaching, because I'm like, yeah, dating's just the gateway drug. It's like what the pain point is, but this isn't just about dating. And they've seen also how our coaching helps them in so many other aspects of their life. Yes, it helps them in romantic relationships, but also platonic relationships with their family. If they have kids, it helps them. If they have a business, it helps them. If they have a career and they want, a promotion or another career track or whatever, it helps that. And it helps their health. Like it just, when you focus on you, it's going to help everything in your life. It's not, dating doesn't exist in a vacuum is what I always say.
Yeah, totally. The confidence. Yeah, it's not just with that one pipeline. It's with all of them. So I love that. I've never thought about it that way. That's really interesting. So when people first come to you, let's just say, you had five ladies walk up to you. What do you think? What can you kind of just guess what they're going to ask you right off the bat? Because you've probably worked with lots of people already. What are their vain struggles? What are they going through right now?
They're either going to ask me about their specific, what I call situationship, or they're going to ask me about, and not even ask me, but more of just like, tell me about how awful online dating is. Those are probably one of the two places they would start with. And sometimes they can be combined because it can be a situationship from a guy online. But depending on their age and if they've been divorced or never been married, it'll usually just be like, this is what's going on for me. Like, I don't understand. Why am I still single?
So is that a big thing? I feel like such an old lady now. Is that a big thing?
Online dating?
Online dating. I know it's a big thing, but is that where a lot of people are trying to date? Like, I know everyone kind of is such a, if I try it online, is it easier than in person, or what are people gravitating more right now?
Yeah, it really depends on your personality. People will always say, like, there's still this belief that meeting someone in quote unquote real life in person is the gold standard. And that's just a story that people tell themselves about what it means to meet someone in person versus online. I personally think meeting someone online and online dating, I think it's great, especially if you're introverted, especially if you're a single mom, especially if you're someone where you just don't want to go out all the time and just feel like you have to like be meeting people so that you could potentially meet someone. I think it just takes a lot of the pressure off. It's for me, when I was dating, it was so much easier. I'm not like the most extroverted person in the world, and I'm someone who I don't necessarily know a ton of people. I know a few people really well. And so for me, it's really hard to meet new people like that, because I would rather just go hang out with a couple of my closest friends, either invite them over to my house or go to their house, or just go to like a quiet bar and just like hang out or whatever, and not like be socialized with everyone at the bar. And so like that is really hard to meet new people, right? And you're just going to meet the same people over and over again. Not to say that like I couldn't have pushed myself, and I did, but like it's just not natural to me, again, because I'm very just reserved and introvert, all that kind of stuff. So for me, I just really liked being able to go online, and I was using OkCupid and Hinge at the time when I was dating. Tinder was around, but it was definitely more of just the hookup app. It's not that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it can be, but it's definitely more than just that. And so I just love that I could just meet people online and then go out on a date, and I was meeting great guys. And then I would go to hang out with my friends, and there would be zero pressure to be like, oh God, I should meet somebody right now. Turns out when I was like in that like place of like no pressure to meet anyone because I was already meeting people online, I did end up meeting people in person, but that was very rare for me, or not rare, but like just like, whoa, like this happened, like this doesn't usually happen. So I think online dating is great, and I think that we just have to, I always say online dating isn't the problem, it's how you relate to it is the problem.
Oh yeah, totally.
And online dating isn't so different from meeting people at a bar, especially the swipe apps, because like if you walk into a bar or a party or a meetup event or some singles event or whatever, you are already swiping right and left in your brain.
I'm sure.
No one's walking around with a freaking profile plastered to their back.
Right.
And so I think when you're using like the apps like Hinge or Tinder or Bumble or whatnot, it's much more realistic to what it is actually like when you meet someone in person. Because when you meet someone, using Match or OkCupid, and I was totally guilty of this, you begin to make decisions on whether or not someone would be a good partner for you based on really silly things. And the story I always share is I am from North Carolina. I went to UNC Chapel Hill. And so obviously big basketball school, and our arch nemesis is Duke. And we hate Duke. We don't like Duke basketball, like boo Duke or whatever. And so I was on OkCupid. I was just looking through some profiles, and this one guy looked awesome. Just like, looked like he was just really smart, had a good career. He was cute. He was interested in similar things, blah, blah, blah. And then I get to the end of his profile, and he says something about Blue Devils. And I'm like, oh yeah, no freaking way. And it was just so stupid, right? And so I never messaged him, and who knows? I'm just kidding. I'm happily married now. But anyways, I know this is a silly example, but I feel like we make a lot of really silly decisions based on really arbitrary stuff when you use online dating. So I do like in person, but I really also just like the swipe, because just go on your gut and what your gut thinks.
Well, and I also feel like our communication style is so much different than it was, 20 years ago or whatever. Texting feels so much more casual and comfortable for everybody.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of the older generation kind of frowns upon that, which I disagree. I feel like if we're comfortable with communicating in any way, then more power to whatever that method is, because communication is so important. And I'd rather, if I was dating, I would rather meet somebody and be able to talk to them via phone than have to go out to a bar, because I'm not a bar person. And if I live in a small town, there are literally no options. So this is a great avenue for me. So it's like, find what works best for you in any way of your life, what you feel most comfortable, and then use that tool if it's available. So we should be really grateful that there are tools like that are available for us. So tell me,
totally,
did you meet your husband on an app, or how did you meet your husband?
So I met my husband at a bar. It was actually through a friend, so it was very rare. And what's funny is when we met, I was very drawn to him, but I never thought anything serious would come from it. So I was like, this is fun. I'm going to play this up, but nothing's going to come from it. And so I think I was completely unattached to any particular outcome, which is, I think, one of the reasons why it worked out, at least at the beginning. It's funny because when I met him, he was dating someone else. And I, oh my God, that week, I'd probably been on like 3 or 4 different OkCupid dates. So we met through a mutual friend, and we didn't actually start dating when we met, because again, he was dating someone else. So we ended up started dating about 6 weeks after we first met.
I love that. I met my husband when I was 4, so that's our story. I love to hear about this. This is such a foreign topic to me. And But what I really like is like you're so comfortable talking about it, and that's why you are doing this for a living. And that's so important to all of the coaches out there who are feeling like they have to be a certain person. Like you said, I stalked this one person for a whole year and nothing came of it because you were trying to be somebody else, right? So once
Totally.
you finally found where you're comfortable and where you're really good at, that's when everything started to fall into place.
Yeah. And I just really keep my eyes on my own paper, you know, like I know like other love and relationship type coaches, like I know them, like we have professional relationships, like I've been on their podcast or, you know, they've been on mine or we've done summits together, but I don't follow, you know, every single blog post or episode they put out because I don't want it to influence, you know, my own work and what I believe. And so it's like, I have a list of like who quote unquote competitors are. But I just, you know, because at the beginning I was definitely not doing that. I would go to like other health coaches or at the very beginning, even of relationship coaching, like, okay, what is she doing? And then like model my sales page after hers. And it's like, okay, why is anyone buying my thing? It's like,
exactly. Because you weren't being yourself.
Yeah. And I just find that the more I mean, gosh, that first Hillary, my first coach, she was just so right. Like the more I focus on my own work, then the more I'm able to show up more authentic to my audience, the more confident I feel to, you know, reach out to colleagues for collaboration or just to connect. It's just, you know, it all comes back down to my own work. And it's, I mean, yeah, I'm Capricorn, so I'm like super into the business stuff. I'm really good at it. I love it. But that alone isn't gonna get me to where I want to go, or really where I think any, you know, personal brand or life coach type of person wants to get. You really have to, I think, do your own work and have your own, not just like personality, but your own like your own unique perspective and wisdom behind the work that you do.
Yeah, and you're owning your journey, and that's so important. And that's how you stand out online, because there's a sea of coaches and there's a sea of love coaches and life coaches. Like there's thousands of us. But when you're owning your own journey and you're saying like, I've been there, you guys, you know, like for me, like if I decided I can be a love coach and people come to me, how do I meet people online to be, I don't know. I have no idea. I can't pretend to be somebody that I'm not. And you're owning that because you're recognizing your own journey. So what would you say to somebody who's listening and is like, you know, I'm really good at this, but I'm like, oh, maybe they feel embarrassed to call themselves this type of coach, and they're just kind of camouflaging themselves with something. What would be like your biggest tip for them to just own whoever they are?
Well, I would say a couple things. I would say, you know, the first thing I would say, and sometimes this is something I have to still remind myself, like having your own business and being a coach is a choice. You know, no one's making anyone do it. And you can, and if, and I find just for me, giving myself permission, like, hey, Veronica, if this ever gets to be too much, you can go get a job, you know, or you can just have another kind of business, like, you know, whatever. And so when I give myself that permission, then I take the pressure off myself to like be someone. And for me, then that from that place, it's much easier for me to share my story or share a piece of advice or wisdom or inspiration with my audience. When I feel like I'm pressuring myself to like, oh, gotta do something today, or gotta share something today, or gotta write something awesome or whatever. It's always going to come out feeling a little like forced, and no one's going to resonate with it. It's not going to feel really great creating it. And so in that moment, I'll just be like, you know what, Veronica, you don't have to do this right now. And maybe it's just in that moment, but it's also like a bigger permission of like, you're choosing this path every single day. And obviously there's there's differing levels of comfort. I don't think you necessarily have to just be a totally like open book and share every single little thing with your audience. And there's definitely a range for sure. But I do think as a coach, it's really important to, to share that, because, you know, I've had people, you know, I've been on podcasts or I've been on summits or whatever, and after those air, people will send me a direct message on Instagram or something, and they're like, how can I work with you? And it's like they're not shopping around for a love coach,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not like, okay, I'm talking to like 3 other people, I'll let you know next week. I mean, yeah, sometimes I get that, and like whatever, I don't care, it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But then sometimes it's like they're not looking anywhere else. They want to work with me, and so I do think there has to be an element of your personality and your experience behind it, because I think it's just the nature of this business, and so I don't know if that's the answer. Maybe some
It
people want
is.
to
I like
hear.
it. No, I like it. It was like be yourself because you are always good enough,
Yeah,
and choose the path of least resistance with everything. Like you said, you chose this. You were raised to become a love coach, right?
yeah,
And that we picked this ourselves. We decided one day we want to help other people, and this is how I'm going to help them. And like you said, if you come to your computer and you're like, this does not feel aligned with what I want to say or do today, you can give yourself permission to not do it or give yourself permission to do it. It's all you. And it always comes back to just, again, choosing the path of least resistance to make your life as easy as possible. So you come off to people like, wow, it looks really great to be this person. I want to know how she does it. I want to work with her. And it's this snowball
yeah.
effect.
And one thing also, is, and especially at first, and I was really shy about sharing my story. And also it's a muscle, I think, that's built over time. Like now I'll share a lot more with my audience.
Mm-hmm.
At first, like I was not sharing some of the stories I share now. So I do think it's a muscle and you just get better and stronger at it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the other thing is when you are scared of sharing a story, it's like, oh, what people think, that's something we
Yeah.
often ask ourselves. And then this is how I would coach one of my clients, like, oh, what do people think if we get divorced or whatever? I'm like, okay, well, who are those people?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, oh, well, like people I grew up with or whatever. I'm like, okay, but I want names. I know I don't know them, but
Yeah.
I want names. And then either they realize they can't think of any names of anyone when they say, oh, well, people think of me or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
or they can think of names and they're like, oh yeah, I actually don't really give a crap what those people think. And so that's another thing I'll do is sometimes I'm like, there's a post I'm going to post or a podcast episode I'm going to put up or whatever. I'm like, oh, what will people think? And then I'm like, wait a minute, Veronica, who are these people? And, sometimes there might be a specific person in mind. I'm like, do I really care? No, not really. And then more often than not, it's like, oh yeah, there's not actually any people that I'm worried about.
Yeah, and I
That's a
bet
really
that you
helpful
find
exercise.
when you're vulnerable that's when people really reach out to you and thank you for sharing that
Totally.
story.
Totally.
Mm-hmm. So good. This was such a great conversation, Veronica. So if people want to find you on social media, let's share some links that people can go and see the things that you're sharing.
Yeah. So I am on Instagram, more than I'd like to be, but that's the best place to connect with me.
We needed a support group for people like that.
My name there is Veronica E. Grant, and you can reach out to me there. I'm super active in DMs. I love the DMs.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a podcast as well. So if you are struggling with relationships, my podcast is The Love Life Connection. And I have a quiz on my website to help you discover what's blocking you in love. And you can get that at veronicagrant.com/quiz.
Love it. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, Veronica. It was awesome to talk with you and learn about what you do and how you help people. I loved hearing your story. And I think that everyone's going to really enjoy this.
Thanks so much for having me. This was fun.
Want 10 ways for you to start booking your dream clients? I created this workbook for you because I wanted to share my best tips on how I book mine. You're not going to believe how easy these are, and I know you'll be able to take my tips and put them into action ASAP so you can start working with your dream clients. To grab the workbook for free, all you have to do is go to lindsaymaloney.com/podcast. Hey coaches, are you a member of the Book Your Dream Clients community yet? Because you should be. Just go to dreamclientcommunity.com to request free access. We do fun things like website audits, challenges, and we even have a book club. Join the free Dream Client community now, and we'll see you there. Thank you so much for listening to the Book Your Dream Clients podcast. If you want to find out more information how you can work with me, just head on over to my website, lindsaymaloney.com. You will be able to see how you can work with me privately or in a group setting. I'm all about helping you start and scale your coaching business, so I'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on iTunes and leave a rating and review. And if you want bonus points, take a screenshot of a review and tag me on your Instagram story. I'd love to see it and share it with my audience. And plus, you don't want to miss another episode.